Welcome back, everyone. Another cool element that can spice up your theme is rhythm. And most of the themes we've been looking at have been fairly slow moving and calm, but adding some rhythmical elements can easily add some more drive to our themes. And keep in mind, I'm not necessarily talking about percussion or drums here, I'm talking about a rhythmical pattern or rhythmical element as an additional layer to your main theme, just like ostinatos or melodic fillers. A rhythmical element can also be an ostinato, but since ostinatos can focus a lot on melodic patterns as well, I'm going to use rhythm here to strictly talk about purely rhythmical ostinatos and rhythmical patterns in your theme. So let's look at a little example where I'm going to add a rhythmical element to this little theme that I made right now. So let's start by looking at it and we can discuss the different options we have. Now, there's a lot of ways to create these rhythmical elements, and usually I just improvise something that feels right. But let's look at some considerations you need to make when you're going to add a rhythmical layer to your composition. First of all, you kind of need to think about if you want something that's contrasting or similar to what's already there. Because you can either use your rhythms to enhance traits that's already in the composition or theme, or you can make something completely new that it will add like a sense of contrast and make it more fresh. But this will also be stick out a little bit more and be a little bit more distinguished than something that blends more into what's already there. So let's just use this as an example. This theme, it's fairly steady and slow moving. So if I wanted something that was blending into this, I would probably make something that sounds like this, just steady. Something that just follows like a steady rhythm. Or I mean, just a pattern like that, just a repeating rhythmical thing that is doubling the strings could be a rhythmical theme and an element that you could use to really create some more power and drive to and otherwise fairly static and slow moving theme. Now, if I wanted something more contrasting, I would stay away from this steady rhythm that's following what's going on here and would more likely be something like this. And so on. I was just trying a few different contrasting rhythms just so you can see what I mean. So what's the deal with those is that they are different. They have a different rhythmical structure than what's already going on in this theme. So it makes them stick out, but it also makes the rhythmical layer a bit more characteristic and interesting. So that's an important decision you need to make. And none of them are good or bad. It's just what kind of role you want the rhythmical pattern to play in your composition. Now, tempo is also a thing you need to think about. For example, I could play something like this. And it gives it a little bit of a drive, but it's not extremely fast compared to something like extremely hard to play that on a keyboard, but I almost managed it. But you get what I mean. So, or something like this. If you want something that's more quick or something that's slower but still adds rhythmical drive, that's another thing you need to take into consideration. Both can be really cool. It's just about what you prefer. So now we also have what's called syncopation, and this kind of goes into the contrast and similarity thing, but syncopation is offbeat rhythms. It's notes or hits falling in between the beats. So while this would be straight on the beat, if I play something in between these beats, you have what we call a syncopation. So that's a syncopation right there. Now this can be used for cool effects, and all of the hits don't have to be falling in between the hit beats, but I mean, you can use a combination, but this will also give it a more contrasting and a little bit more groovy effect. So let me just play something like that. And that sounds pretty alright to me. Actually, I think that's what I would probably go for in this case, or at least for the sake of this video. This is what I'm gonna settle on as like the little rhythmical element. Now, this can be tweaked and used in a lot of different ways. For example, maybe later in a bigger part of the theme, I might want to add some staccatos. And you see, now this is not just a random melodic thing or random instrument thing that's going on here. Now we've been creating one of the main elements of our composition, just like the ostinato, the counter melody, the melody, and the chords. These are kind of the main staples, the main building blocks of our entire composition. So it's nice to use these ones in different ways throughout the composition. Maybe this pattern would be introduced first in the bridge or the B section, or maybe in the second repetition of the main theme or something like that. But when you have this rhythmical pattern, there's a lot of options and opportunities for expanding on this later in the track. Maybe you want some trumpets or whatever. And so on. Just as long as you're using this rhythm, it's gonna be recognized by the listener as like a recurring motif. Now, you could also use this in, let's say, the climax if you want choirs. Something like that, or maybe you want some drums to accentuate some of the things in this rhythm. So that is another one of the additional elements you can introduce and use in your themes to make them sound more interesting and just 10 times more badass, just like your ostinatos and counter melodies. So whatever you choose to do, have fun and experiment with this. Rhythms can be a cool way to spice up your themes, and feel free to make a rhythmical element for the theme you're making in this course. In the meantime, I'll be waiting for you guys in the next lecture.